See, I've been in the knife game for a little bit now, and I've seen my fair share of good, bad, and ugly, but every once in a while something different comes along. The name's Jack, by the way, and I review knives from time to time. I got a hot tip one day when this came across my desk. What was I dealing with exactly? Well, it was this guy here, the LCK. A popular knife, but one I never got. Like flashes of a distant memory, I tried to put the pieces together. Why didn't I get this knife? And then it all came together. My man JT actually put me onto the fact that this knife might not be what it seems. It might be a peculiar popular, to be exact. So I'm going to take a second hard close look at this LCK and figure out which makes this exact knife so peculiar. How's it going, guys? Today we are checking out the CRKT LCK. So this knife was kindly provided by JT's Knifelife for me to check out. He sent it my way. He had some mixed opinions on the knife, and he wanted to get my take on it, kind of a second opinion, if you will. So we're going to dive into this knife and go over the pros of the knife, the so-sos, and then the cons. And then we'll get my final thoughts and impressions. But first things first, we're going to throw in a spec check, and then yeah, let's get started. So here we go. So let's start with the pros of this knife, the things that this knife does really well. And one of the things that this knife does fantastically is just how well it carries, guys. This is designated as the LCK, which is going to be a lightweight, compact knife, and it really is. This is a joy to carry, especially, I guess you could say, the time that I really appreciated this knife is, you got some days where you come home from work, you throw on the pajama pants, and you just kind of lazily mosey about. That's where this knife excelled. It is a less than half an inch this way, 2.6 ounces, and about 3/4 of an inch this way. It's going to be one of those things that you kind of put in your pocket and you forget about, and it was great. It really did live up to that LCK designation. So a great little compact carry knife that you can forget about, and just overall a joy to have in the pocket. It carries really well compared to a lot of my other knives, so that's a big win on this knife. The next win on it is going to be this pocket clip. You have a deep carry pocket clip. It's kind of integrated into the handle scales, and it's got these recessed screws. So I'm going to put a short clip of me just kind of putting it in and out of the pocket. You can kind of see it goes in and out easily. I slide it all the way to the side, the inside of the pocket, or I'm sorry, the outside of the pocket, so I can have access to the rest of the pocket and really not have anything to worry about. So awesome job on the pocket clip. I appreciate what they did on this. Next up is going to be the design of this knife. I think it's a pretty good looking knife. Very simple design, but it does have a little bit of cues going for it that I think are really nice, kind of minimalist, kind of gentlemanly carry. You have the ridges in the handle, which give it a little bit of just a little bit of something to look at, and they actually function very well as kind of added grip and texture on here. I like how the 3 body screws are set down here. That's a nice little design choice. I think that looks really good. And that's going to go into this little back spacer. It is a mostly open construction, which I'm always good with. And yeah, just a very simple, kind of gentlemanly design, and I think they did a really good job. Next, we're going to go into the blade. So I do like the blade on here. It is very stabby, has a nice fine tip, and I say stabby as in like getting into opening packages, cutting through, like piercing things. And it does have a nice hollow grind on here, so it slices pretty well. And it's got the little swedge that goes across the top. It's not super billboarded. I like that it's up here on the flat. It's not real big. They did the CRKT and Ruger logo right there. So the blade is done really well. I think it's a nice blade. One of the other things kind of going this way on the knife that they did in CRKT, you melt my heart when you do this. This just gives me the warm and fuzzies when I come across this, and that's going to be that this pivot is keyed. It is a keyed pivot. I was taking it apart trying to adjust a few things on here, and I came across that, so that was a nice little surprise that this has a keyed pivot. Those are the little things that will really win me over on a knife, and I'm just super thrilled that they have this. I hate free spinning pivots. We've all came across that, so the keyed pivot is a big win. So awesome job. Thanks CRKT for including that on the knife. Okay, so next up we're going to talk about the so-sos of the knife. These are things that are just kind of meh. Things aren't real deal breakers, but they're just kind of little nitpicks. This knife costs $30, pretty much on the spot. I think that Blade HQ has it for $29.99. And $30 is about the most I want to spend on 8CR13 MOV. Because that's kind of, I feel like the market's really competitive in this price range. Things, once you start getting over $30, you start getting into other things like Sandvik steels and D2s, and those are just going to be better bangs for your buck. So this is right around where I feel comfortable spending on the 8CR13 MOV blade. So it does fall right there at that mark, but really close on it. So kind of comparing that to another knife that I would spend $30 on, very similar features as this knife, and this is going to be the Honey Badger. It's got the flipper tab, 8CR13 MOV, liner lock. It's got this kind of FRN plastic handle. So these are about where I would draw the line. So if there was a line that said $30 mark, these are about this. I actually probably go in this order too, like this and then this. So just kind of pushing it on where I would like with the price, but it's not a deal breaker and it does fall under the mark. Next thing is going to be the general ergonomics for a small knife this size. So it's not, a knife this small isn't going to be a home run when it comes to ergonomics, especially when you talk about dimensions this way and this way. Let's just open it up. It does kind of have this choil here, but I don't think this is supposed to be a full finger choil. When you look at the design of this knife, when you see how thin and slim it is, that choil actually is more of a cutout for this. Hold on, let me get right there. There you go. Sorry, that was a pain in the rear end to get that to focus. But see that standoff right there? I think it was more of a cutout choice for that standoff than a full true finger choil, because it is really small, and you're not going to be able to fit a full finger choil on a blade that's this kind of short, going this way. They could have maybe drawn it out a little bit further this way. I would have been okay, because I have really small fingers, and getting in there, it puts me right on that little edge there, and it does kind of help. I mean, I do use it as a finger choil from time to time, so it does fit that way, but I actually prefer to carry the knife this way because I'm right out of that little cutting edge there. And yeah, so this is how I prefer to hold the knife. These would just do a pretty good job of locking in. But once you start going in this way, there's not much that could stop you from sliding forward. There's no jimping up top. So the general ergonomics for a smaller knife are okay. One thing to touch on is the pocket clip here. When you're holding it that way, I did notice these little corners that stick up right here do kind of go into the meat of the hand. Let me get a good grip and we'll just kind of show you real quickly. So if I go back and I'm holding it tightly and secure, you'll see that it does leave the little marks. So it's a great pocket clip, but it does kind of have a little bit of the pokey factor on the edges there. So that's one of the things that are going to be so-so about it as well. Okay, so let's get into some of the cons about this knife, the things that are kind of little deal breakers that I've experienced with it. Well, first things first is going to be the action on this knife is just, it's kind of all over the place as far as trying to get it tuned in. So there you can see it opens and not all the way, and this is something that happens. It's going to let you down probably 1 out of every 3 flips where it just doesn't really want to do it. Now I've tried playing around with the pivot to kind of tune it in a little bit, because it seems like it's almost there. It seems like it's just a hair too stiff, and then you loosen up the pivot and it does improve a little bit, but it doesn't improve all the way. And then obviously when you start playing around with the pivot, you run the risk of blade play, and this does have detectable blade play when you start adjusting it. Now you can almost get rid of all that blade play, but then this thing is just a monster to flip. It just pretty much, that's what you're getting. Now you can kind of load up on it, go to the back of the flipper tab and just kind of, there you go. But it's kind of a chore. You have to think about it and you really have to load up on it versus kind of going back to like the Honey Badger. You know, this is a flipper knife, and this is one that every time, even, I mean, it's a hard knife to fail. Let me see if I can fail it. Yeah, you can fail it, but it's this one was done really well. The detent was perfect on it, and it goes in and out. And so this is one thing that's going to be a deal breaker on this knife, is on this particular model, there's going to be a little bit asterisk on this, because kind of looking into this knife, it seems like I kind of know what's going on here. But on this exact model, it does seem to have an issue with the flipping and the detectable side-to-side blade play. So those are the two big things on here that I'm going to knock this knife on, is the action is not great, and you got your side-to-side blade play. So those are kind of my pros, my so-sos, and my cons. Final thoughts and impressions on this knife, and what do I think is going on with this. So I called it a peculiar popular knife, because this is a popular knife that received a lot of praise from a lot of people. I think Birdshot had it on their possible, budget knives of the year. I know Nick Shabazz did as well. So this knife got a lot of love when it first came out, and for good reason, because it's a good looking blade, it carries very well, and it was something CRKT did, I think, pretty good. I think they did a pretty good job here. But with any budget knife line, you're always going to run into like the bad apple, the one it's not a great example, and I think that's what this is going on here. I think this is just not a great example of this design. There's a few people I've talked to, I kind of just put that out there about this knife. I know Steve Knife over on Instagram, he does knife reviews and stuff like that. He said his wasn't very particularly impressive, and just, there's a few people out there who didn't really fall in love with theirs for this little reason or that little reason. But the majority of the fanfare is that it's a great knife, and that it carries great, and that the action is great, and that there's no blade play. So I think this is just a bad example. I think that's what this came down to, is that this was just a bad example out of the box, and there was really no saving it. Once it was out and opened, and it was what it was, and it just got past their quality control. Is it a pocket knife that cuts? Yes. Does it look good? Yes. Does it function pretty much in the way it's supposed to? Mostly yes. So if this is one of those knives that you were on the fence about, I would say go watch other reviews and see what they have to say about it. But I think overall this is a good knife, and it's just this particular one has some things going against it that really make you kind of just, me in particular, kind of draw back from it and not fall in love with it. And there was a couple knives that I had like that. My Civivi Aquila was a pretty good knife, but there was just a couple little things. The detent was too hard and a little nitpicky. The sound didn't sound right. It was a little hollow sounding when it clicked open, and just fighting the detent, and with that made me call it a good knife that I wasn't in love with. The Artisan Littoral was a great knife, but the ergonomics were off on it. And this is going to be one of those things where it's a great knife, but there's just one or two things holding me back from falling in love with it, and saying, yeah, guys, go out and buy this knife. But I could say you'll probably be happy with it. That's kind of what I can give you on this knife. I'm really happy to have it though, because of seeing it a lot. I was actually going to buy this knife, and then I watched JT's video, and he had his opinion on it, and it kind of made me pull back, and I'm kind of glad I did. I moved on to other knives, and I'm not heartbroken that I didn't have this knife, and well, ironically, here it is. I have one now, so I appreciate that. JT's kind of the man, in my opinion. His opinions on knives fall in line a lot with what I like on my knives. So when a new knife comes out, he's one of those guys where if he's covering it, he's one of the first guys I'm gonna go to. So if you guys haven't checked out his channel, go check him out. He knows quite a bit. He has fun modding knives. Doesn't take things too seriously. He's not one of those guys. So big shout out to JT. Thanks for sending this along. I'm really happy with the knife for the most part, as you guys could see by the review. But yeah, I had a lot of fun doing this review, and actually carried this around for review probably more than most knives that I get that come across the desk. So I really tried to get to know this knife and find the things that I really didn't like about it. And my list of things that I liked about it, I have quite a few things on here that I didn't expect to like on it, and it's a good knife. So alright guys, there you go. Appreciate you stopping by as always. Hope you guys have a good one. We'll see you really soon. Later guys. You see, I've been in the knife game for a little bit now, and I've seen my share of good, bad, and ugly. But every once in a while, something fits into a different category. The name's Jack, and from time to time, I review knives. Well, this came across my desk, and I think it's something different. The peculiar popular knife. Let's take a look at what we're dealing with. The LCK. Now I'd known I'd seen this particular knife somewhere, and like flashes of distant memory, the pieces started to come together. Why didn't I buy this knife? what stopped me. And then it hit me. I got a hot tip from my man JT over at JT's Knifelife. And with his advice, I didn't buy this knife. Well, look what showed up anyway. The LCK. The same one, to be exact.